My name is Evelyn. I am 39 years old, and until recently I believed I understood what loneliness felt like. I was wrong. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of truth. I was married to a man named Thomas for 16 years, and for most of that time I thought we were solid, unbreakable, the kind of couple others quietly envied. Thomas was calm, responsible, dependable. He paid bills on time, remembered birthdays, fixed things before they broke. He was never cruel, never loud, never dramatic. And because of that, I never imagined he could slowly disappear while still standing right in front of me. The first signs were small enough to ignore. He stopped telling me about his day. When I asked how work was, he said fine and changed the subject. He began spending more time in the garage late at night, claiming he needed quiet. His phone was always face down. When messages arrived, he glanced at the screen and locked it without answering. I told myself all marriages went through quiet phases. Then the quiet grew heavier. Thomas stopped touching me without realizing it. No hand on my back when we passed in the hallway, no arm around my shoulders on the couch. He still slept beside me, but his body faced away, as if something invisible stood between us. I tried to talk to him. I asked if he was unhappy, if I had done something wrong, if we needed time away together. He smiled gently and said I was overthinking. That answer hurt more than anger would have, because it meant my fear had nowhere to land. Months passed like that. We functioned. We smiled in public. We hosted dinners. But at night I lay awake listening to his breathing, wondering when love had turned into polite coexistence. Then came the late nights. Thomas started coming home after midnight. Sometimes 1 a.m. Sometimes later. He always had an explanation. A coworker in trouble. Extra work. A favor that couldn't wait. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But something in his eyes was changing. He looked tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. One night I waited for him with dinner. I sat at the table alone until the food went cold and the clock moved forward without mercy. When he finally came home, I asked where he had been. He looked at me for a long moment and said he was sorry, but did not say why. That was the first time I felt truly afraid. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The unexplained withdrawals from our account. The way he flinched when I entered a room unexpectedly. The way he sometimes stared at nothing, as if carrying thoughts too heavy to share. I did not want to invade his privacy, but fear makes cowards of principles. One night, while he slept, I checked his jacket pockets. Inside, I found a folded medical document. A diagnosis. A name that was not his. A child. My hand shook so badly I dropped the paper. My mind went to the darkest place immediately. An affair. A second family. A secret life I knew nothing about. I confronted him the next morning. I showed him the paper and asked him to explain. He went pale. He did not shout. He did not deny. He only said, "Please, not like this, not yet." That answer shattered what little stability I had left. I told him I could not live with secrets. He said he understood. That night, he did not come home. The next morning, he was gone. He left a note saying he needed time and that he loved me. I spent days replaying every conversation we had ever had, searching for the moment where everything changed. Friends told me to be angry. To demand answers. To prepare for the worst. But anger requires certainty, and all I had was confusion. A week later, driven by desperation more than courage, I followed the address on the medical document. It led me to a pediatric hospital on the edge of the city. Inside, I saw Thomas sitting beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a small boy whose chest rose and fell with mechanical help. A woman stood beside him, exhausted, grateful, broken. Thomas looked at that child with a tenderness I had not seen in months. In that moment, I realized whatever he had been hiding was not betrayal, but something far more complicated. I did not confront him there. I stood in the hallway and watched as he adjusted the blanket around the boy, whispered something gentle, and smiled in a way that broke my heart because I recognized it. It was the smile he used to give me. When he finally noticed me, his face collapsed. He followed me outside in silence, knowing there was no more room for lies. He told me the truth in pieces because saying it all at once felt impossible. Years ago, his best friend had died in an accident, leaving behind a wife and a son with a congenital heart condition. Thomas had promised to help if they ever needed it. When the boy's condition worsened, insurance refused to cover the treatment. The woman was drowning. Thomas stepped in quietly. He paid hospital bills. He sold things. He worked extra shifts. He visited every night to make sure the child was not alone. He never told me because he believed he had to carry this burden himself. He said he did not want to scare me, pressure me, or ask me to choose between our life and someone else's survival. I listened without interrupting, feeling shame and relief twist together inside my chest. I had thought he was pulling away from me. In reality, he was being pulled apart by responsibility and love he did not know how to share. I asked why he left instead of telling me everything when I confronted him. He said he was afraid that once I knew, I would look at him differently, not as a husband, but as a man already breaking underweight. I wanted to scream that I had already been looking at him differently, that silence had done more damage than truth ever could. But the words came too late. 2 days after that conversation, Thomas collapsed at work. The doctors said exhaustion and untreated stress had pushed his body past its limit. I sat beside his hospital bed holding his hand, remembering all the nights I thought he did not care, all the moments I mistook distance for indifference. He woke briefly and apologized for hurting me. I told him I was sorry for not seeing him sooner. He smiled weakly and said love is messy, and that he never stopped loving me, even when he disappeared into the weight of other people's needs. He died that night. After the funeral, I stayed in contact with the woman and her son. The boy survived. Every time he laughs, I see the part of Thomas the world never knew. I learned something painful and permanent from loving my husband. Love is not proven by how much you endure in silence. It is proven by how much you are willing to share before it is too late. I thought I lost my husband because he stopped loving me. The truth is harder to live with. I lost him because we both believed strength meant carrying pain alone. After Thomas was gone, time did not heal me the way people promised it would. Time only created distance between who I had been and who I was forced to become. In the weeks that followed his death, I moved through the days like a shadow of myself, attending appointments, signing papers, answering condolences with a practiced nod. Everyone spoke about him in past tense, as if he had already faded into memory, but inside our house his presence was everywhere. His mug still waited by the sink. His jacket still hung by the door. His tools remained exactly where he had left them, unfinished projects frozen in place. I could not bring myself to touch anything, because touching meant accepting that nothing would ever change again. At night, the silence was unbearable. I replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I had missed, words I should have spoken, questions I should have asked sooner. I wondered how many times he had sat beside me carrying pain he believed I could not handle. I wondered how often I had mistaken his exhaustion for distance and his silence for indifference. The truth settled slowly, painfully, like something sinking deep into my bones. I had loved Thomas, but I had not known him as fully as I believed. A month after the funeral, I found a small box hidden behind old paint cans in the garage. Inside were receipts, medical bills, handwritten notes, schedules, names I did not recognize, and amounts of money carefully recorded. It was a map of the life he had lived in secret, not out of deception, but out of a misguided sense of duty. Reading through it felt like discovering a stranger who shared my husband's handwriting. There were notes reminding himself to bring soup, to check on a nurse's shift, to call the woman whose son he was helping, and again, words written in the margin, "Do not tell Evelyn." Seeing my name written like that hurt in a way I could not explain. Not because he hid something from me, but because he believed I could not stand beside him while he carried it. I began visiting the hospital where the boy had been treated. At first, I told myself I was doing it for closure, but the truth was I needed to see the world Thomas had been living in when he was not with me. The nurses recognized me. They spoke about him with quiet respect, telling me how he stayed late, how he listened, how he never asked for recognition. One nurse told me that Thomas often sat in the hallway long after visiting hours, staring at the floor, looking like a man who believed rest was something he had not earned. That sentence stayed with me. He did not believe he deserved rest. He did not believe he deserved help. I realized then that his silence had not been about protecting me alone. It had been about punishing himself. Months passed, and grief changed shape. It was no longer sharp, but heavy, constant. I returned to work. I smiled at the right moments. I learned how to function again, but something inside me had shifted permanently. I could no longer ignore the quiet signs in people around me. I noticed how often others carried their pain invisibly, how easy it was to mistake silence for strength. One evening, the woman whose son Thomas had helped invited me for dinner. The boy ran toward me, laughing, full of life, his heart beating strong. Watching him felt like both a gift and a wound. Thomas had saved a life, but he had lost his own in the process. Later that night, I stood alone in my kitchen, realizing something that terrified me. Love does not end when a person dies. It changes shape, but it does not disappear. I would carry Thomas with me for the rest of my life, not as a memory frozen in time, but as a lesson written into every choice I made moving forward. I began volunteering at a support center for families caring for sick relatives. I listened more than I spoke. I learned how many people believed they had to be strong alone. Every time I saw that belief in someone's eyes, I felt the echo of Thomas. I told his story when it felt right, not as a tragedy, but as a warning. I told them that love is not proven by silence, that strength does not mean isolation, and that carrying everything alone is not noble, it is dangerous. Some nights, I still talk to him in my thoughts. I tell him about the boy's progress, about the people I meet, about the way the world keeps moving forward even when it feels wrong. I tell him I forgive him, and that I hope he has finally found rest. Losing Thomas did not teach me how to stop loving. It taught me how to love better. To ask questions sooner. To listen deeper. To never assume silence means safety. I once believed I lost my husband because something pulled him away from me. Now I know the truth. We lost each other because neither of us understood that love is strongest when it is shared, not endured alone.